Let's jump right into it. Number 10. High heels were originally invented for men, specifically Persian cavalry soldiers in the 10th century. Picture this, you're a mounted archer trying to stay balanced while shooting arrows at full gallop. Those heels weren't about looking fabulous. They were literally life-saving stirrup grips that kept warriors from falling off their horses during battle. When Persian diplomats visited European courts in the 1600s, aristocratic men went absolutely crazy for this exotic footwear. King Louis XIV of France became obsessed, declaring that only nobility could wear heels over 2 inches high. The taller your heels, the higher your social status. Women only started wearing heels because they wanted to appear more masculine and powerful, copying men's fashion. It's the complete opposite of today's gender associations. What we now consider the ultimate symbol of femininity was actually peak masculine warrior gear for centuries. Number 9. Neckties exist because of Croatian mercenaries who nearly conquered Europe. During the 30 Years' War in the 1600s, Croatian soldiers wore distinctive knotted scarves around their necks as part of their military uniform. These weren't fashion statements. They were practical identification markers that helped distinguish allies from enemies in the chaos of medieval battlefields where everyone was covered in mud and blood. When these Croatian fighters arrived in Paris as allies of France, the sophisticated French court lost their minds over these exotic neck accessories. The French called them cravats after the Croatian word charvat, and suddenly every fashionable gentleman in Europe had to have one. King Louis XIV made cravats mandatory court dress, and the trend exploded across the continent. What started as battlefield survival gear for Eastern European warriors became the foundation of every business suit you see today. Every time you adjust your tie before a meeting, you're essentially performing a ritual that began with soldiers preparing for medieval combat. Number 8. Tanning became fashionable because of a massive industrial accident and fashion designers' vacation mistake. For thousands of years, pale skin was the ultimate status symbol because it meant you were wealthy enough to stay indoors while poor people worked outside and got sunburned. Then in 1923, Coco Chanel accidentally got a suntan while cruising on a yacht and returned to Paris with bronzed skin. The fashion world went absolutely insane. But here's the deeper historical twist. This coincided perfectly with the rise of factory work during the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, the working class was trapped inside dark, smoky factories, while only the wealthy could afford leisure time outdoors. Status symbols completely flipped. A tan now meant you had enough money and free time to vacation in exotic locations, instead of being stuck behind a desk or assembly line. Within a decade, an entire industry built around deliberately damaging your skin became a multi-billion-dollar obsession. We literally inverted thousands of years of beauty standards because one designer had an accidental vacation mishap that happened to align with massive economic shifts. Number 7. Wearing all black became associated with sophistication because of medieval plague doctors and Victorian mourning rituals that got completely out of control. In the 14th century, plague doctors wore head-to-toe black robes as protective gear, creating this terrifying association between black clothing and death. Fast forward to the Victorian era, where mourning became an elaborate social performance. When Prince Albert died in 1861, Queen Victoria wore nothing but black for the remaining 40 years of her life, making mourning fashion incredibly elaborate and expensive. Victorian society developed insanely specific rules about mourning dress. You had to wear full black for exactly 2 years and 6 months if your husband died, 1 year for parents, 6 months for siblings. The fashion industry made fortunes selling specialized mourning clothes, mourning jewelry, even mourning fans and umbrellas. But here's where it gets weird. By the early 20th century, designers like Chanel started using black for elegant evening wear, completely divorcing it from death associations. What began as plague protection and grief ritual transformed into the color of sophisticated rebellion. Now wearing all black signals that you're too cool to follow colorful trends, when historically it meant you were either dodging deadly disease or publicly displaying your grief according to strict social protocols. Number 6. Ripped jeans became a fashion statement because of a massive economic crisis and rebellious youth who couldn't afford new clothes. During the Great Depression and throughout the 1930s, working-class families couldn't afford to replace worn-out work clothes, so they just kept wearing them until they literally fell apart. What started as economic necessity became a visual symbol of hardship and authenticity. Then in the 1950s, Hollywood completely romanticized this look through movies like Rebel Without a Cause, where damaged clothing represented youthful rebellion against conformist society. James Dean wearing ripped clothes wasn't a fashion choice, it was a political statement about rejecting materialism and social expectations. The irony reached peak absurdity in the 1980s when fashion companies started selling pre-ripped jeans for hundreds of dollars, essentially charging wealthy people premium prices to look like they couldn't afford proper clothing. We created an entire industry around artificially creating the appearance of poverty and hardship. Today, you can spend more money on professionally distressed jeans than most people spend on groceries, completely inverting the original meaning of worn-out clothes as symbols of economic struggle. Number 5. Wearing white wedding dresses only became traditional because Queen Victoria wanted to show off her expensive handmade lace, and accidentally created the biggest wedding industry marketing scam in history. Before 1840, brides wore their best dress in whatever color they owned, often choosing dark colors because they were practical and could be worn again. Wedding dresses were investments, not disposable ceremonial costumes. Then Queen Victoria married Prince Albert wearing a white silk satin dress decorated with Honiton lace to promote British textile industry. The press went absolutely crazy, publishing detailed descriptions and illustrations across Europe and America. Suddenly every woman wanted to copy the Queen's style, but here's the crucial tale. White fabric was incredibly expensive and impractical, because it showed every stain and could rarely be cleaned properly with 19th century technology. Wearing white was literally burning money for a single day, which made it the ultimate display of wealth and family status. The wedding industry seized on this trend and spent the next century convincing women that white dresses were ancient tradition and religious requirement, when actually they were recent royal fashion marketing that lasted exactly one day. Now families go into debt buying dresses that cost more than cars for ceremonies lasting a few hours, all because one queen wanted to promote local lace makers 180 years ago. Number 4. Pocket watches evolved into wristwatches because of World War I trench warfare, where checking the time could literally get you killed by sniper fire. Before 1914, only women wore wrist jewelry while men carried pocket watches as symbols of masculine sophistication. Pulling out a pocket watch was a deliberate, dignified gesture that showed you were important enough to control your own schedule. Then millions of men got trapped in trenches where split-second timing meant the difference between successful attacks and complete massacre. Soldiers needed to coordinate artillery barrages, troop movements, and gas attacks with perfect precision. But reaching into your pocket to check time meant raising your body above the trench line and becoming an easy target for enemy snipers. Military commanders started issuing wrist-mounted timepieces so soldiers could check time while staying protected. After the war, millions of veterans returned home already accustomed to wrist watches, and the fashion completely flipped within a decade. What had been considered feminine jewelry became essential masculine equipment. The entire watch industry pivoted from making elaborate pocket timepieces to sleek wrist accessories. Today's luxury watch market, worth billions of dollars and obsessed with military-inspired designs, exists because trench warfare made traditional timekeeping literally deadly. Every time someone checks their Apple Watch, they're using technology that evolved from soldiers trying not to get shot while coordinating battlefield timing. Number 3. Wearing baseball caps backwards became a cultural phenomenon because of industrial safety equipment and television broadcasting technical limitations that accidentally created the coolest rebellion symbol of the 1980s. Originally, catchers in baseball wore their caps backwards so the brim wouldn't interfere with their protective face masks. It was purely functional safety gear, not style. For decades, this remained strictly practical baseball equipment with zero fashion implications. Then MTV launched in 1981 with a major technical problem. Studio lighting created harsh shadows when people wore forward-facing caps during interviews, making their faces difficult to see on camera. Producers started asking musicians and personalities to flip their caps around for better visibility. But this created an unintended visual association between backwards caps and cool, rebellious celebrities. Kids watching MTV saw their favorite musicians wearing caps backwards and assumed it was an intentional style choice rather than television production necessity. The look exploded throughout hip-hop culture, skateboarding, and youth rebellion movements. What began as safety equipment for baseball catchers and a solution to lighting problems became one of the most iconic symbols of 1990s youth culture. Fashion brands started designing caps specifically intended to be worn backwards, completely inverting the original purpose. Now backwards caps signal casual confidence and rebellious attitude, when they actually originated from industrial safety protocols and technical broadcasting challenges that had nothing to do with style or rebellion. Number 2, wearing sunglasses indoors became associated with celebrity coolness because of a massive medical scandal involving syphilis treatment that Hollywood desperately wanted to hide from the public. In the early 20th century, before antibiotics existed, one common treatment for syphilis involved deliberate mercury poisoning and exposure to intense ultraviolet light therapy. These treatments often caused severe eye sensitivity and temporary vision problems, forcing patients to wear dark glasses constantly to function in normal lighting. Many Hollywood stars of the 1920s and 1930s were secretly receiving these treatments, but couldn't admit it without destroying their careers and personal reputations. Wearing sunglasses indoors became a way to hide the medical side effects while maintaining their glamorous public image. The look became associated with mysterious sophistication and wealth because only famous people seemed to wear sunglasses in inappropriate settings. What audiences didn't realize was that many of their favorite stars were literally hiding medical symptoms from highly stigmatized disease treatment. The fashion industry and Hollywood publicity machine deliberately promoted indoor sunglasses as a symbol of exclusive celebrity lifestyle rather than medical necessity. This created an entire culture around dark glasses as symbols of coolness, mystery, and fame that persists today. Every time someone wears sunglasses indoors to look cool, They're unknowingly copying a fashion trend that originated from celebrities trying to hide embarrassing medical side effects, from treatments for sexually transmitted diseases that could have ruined their careers. Number 1. Wearing expensive designer logos prominently displayed on clothing became a status symbol because of medieval sumptuary laws that literally made it illegal for poor people to dress above their social class, creating a psychological obsession with visible wealth signals that fashion brands exploited centuries later. Throughout medieval Europe, governments passed laws dictating exactly what colors, fabrics, and styles each social class was legally allowed to wear. Peasants could only wear rough brown cloth, merchants were restricted to specific colors and materials, while nobility had exclusive rights to silk, purple dye, and fur trim. These weren't suggestions. Violating sumptuary laws could result in fines, imprisonment, or even death. The laws created an intense psychological association between visible clothing markers and social power that became deeply embedded in European culture for centuries. And these laws finally disappeared during the Industrial Revolution. The psychological craving for visible status markers remained but had no legal framework. Fashion brands in the 20th century essentially recreated artificial sumptuary laws through pricing and exclusivity, making their logos the new equivalent of medieval class markers. Wearing a designer logo became a way to signal that you could afford to join an exclusive social tier, just like wearing purple once signaled royal blood. The entire luxury fashion industry is built on exploiting this ancient psychological need to display social status through clothing, turning medieval legal requirements into voluntary consumer obsession. Today, people pay extra money to become walking advertisements for fashion companies, essentially paying for the privilege of displaying artificial status markers that would have been legally mandated hierarchy signals 500 years ago. I'll make similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.